Hey, awesome people. I'm back with another one of my truth bombs, and you guys are sat on my lap right now. So if the video moves around a little bit, it's because you're sat on my lap. Um, look, I just really wanted to touch base and kind of throw in a little bit of an extra truth bomb into the process, partly as a response to some of the content that I've seen been going up. And there's been some really awesome content, by the way, some really great answers, and I'm so pleased that the people going through the program are leaning into this work and not necessarily finding it easy. And in fact, I'm even more pleased when someone's finding it hard and they still carry on leaning in and they still keep coming back to it. Right? It's easy when you think of it, to go, screw this, it's too hard, don't want to play anymore, throw your teddies in the corner and kind of chalk this up to another, oh, well, that was a waste of time and that was a waste of effort. I promise you, nothing that you're doing here is a waste of time, a waste of effort, even if as you're going through it triggers emotion, even if as you're going through it causes you doubt and darkness, even if as you're going through it's causing you frustration and anger and all kinds of stuff, right? It's never, remember I told you back right in the beginning when we kind of came to our agreements about how the program was going to pan out and what you were going to experience. I told you what you were going to feel during this, and that there's going to be times when you get angry and pissed off and frustrated at the program, at the questions, at yourself, and there'll be times when you be angry, frustrated, and pissed off at me, right? And I think for most people at various points, most of that, if not all of it, has come true, right? That kind of these are the experiences you've had. How did I know that? Because partly because of what I want to speak to you about today, right? And it's this: the many of you kind of in commentary over the last couple of missions, particularly as we've started to get into the social missions, and the kind of, how are you showing up, and how you communicate with people in social aikido, and identifying willpower versus skill power, all this kind of stuff, right? As we start to reach this point of the program, and as we have started to reach this point of the program, I should say, I've noticed people kind of starting to slip in phrases like ego, right? Kind of, I think it's just my ego talking, or yeah, maybe this is right, but maybe that's just ego, right? And it's not just been one or two of you; it's been several of you who have kind of thrown that in there. Which, kind of, I always kind of use that as a bit of a temperature gauge. If I see one person come up with something, go right, okay, that's how it's landing. I'm seeing two, three, four, five people come up and go, okay, so ego is being triggered here. Ego, most people have a misunderstanding of what ego is, and because they have a misunderstanding of what ego is, they're often triggered by when ego shows up, or they're self-critical about kind of being egotistical, or any of these things, right? Ego's got a bad rap. Look, let me just tell you what ego is. Ego is nothing more than your identity, nothing less either, right? Ego is your identity. It's how you see yourself. That's what ego is. And so, unless you're a spiritually awakened master like a Buddha or a Jesus Christ or a Muhammad, or whoever you hold to be the awakened one, relative to your religion or your framework for things, right? Unless you're one of those people who, in theory, had managed to completely release self identity and identify with everything and everyone in all times and all places, right? Unless you're one of those people, and I've never met one, you will have an ego, and you will have a fairly strong ego. Although, as we're finding out in this program, often a ill-defined one, an unskillfully defined ego, right? In other words, an unskillfully defined self-identity. There are all these things that we think we are, but they're not very well defined. And so, when we're going through the process of defining them, the part that thinks it knows what it is, right? So stay with me here. The part that thinks it knows what it is and what it's about gets pissed off to find out that, oh crap, there's all these things about myself that I don't know. There's all these things about myself that have been unskillful. There's all these things about whatever, right? And there's a part of you that does that, but it's not directly the ego. The ego is very clear on who you are, right? How you're showing up. The bit that's giving you shit, the bit that's having a go at you, the bit that's kind of making you feel bad, making you self-critical, that part is vanity. Okay. So you got the ego, which is your identity. You got vanity, which is how you want others to see you. how you want others to treat you, how you want others to be as a result of what you believe your identity is, right? So they're two different things. And when we're getting triggered, we nearly always getting triggered by our vanities, not truly by our ego. We can be frustrated at elements of our ego in that, if they're not clearly defined, you go, fuck it. That's why I've been going round and round in circles. And there's that frustration, and there's that kind of sense of, if only I'd known this sooner, right? But when we find ourselves really, really getting frustrated with things and being super, super critical of ourselves, it's nearly always vanity. It's There's an element of, I should have figured this out by now, and what must people think about me because I haven't, right? That key there. What must people think about me, or what might people think about me if they found out? If they found out I wasn't as certain and as sure in this, how could I possibly ever go out into the world as a coach again and talk to people about self confidence, right? If I aren't as certain and sure about this other area, how can I possibly be a role model for these things, right? And it's that, remember I said the size of your secrets determine the size of your sickness. Well, it's that again, right? Well, that's vanity. Why do we get sick? It's because we're vain, right? Vanity comes in and says, fuck, if I get caught for this, like my business, my life, my relationship, the respect that I get from other people, that's all going to be in jeopardy. Does this make sense? Right? So yes, we definitely want to some degree get rid of our vanity, right? And that's probably not the most skillful term. We want to de-emphasize elements of vanity. We're always going to be slightly vain because we do want people to see us in a certain way, right? But if most of our identity is actually coming from vanity, then ego by definition isn't the real problem, is it? Right? Or it's only a problem because we haven't developed our sense of self so strongly that other people's opinions of us aren't the be all and end all. They're not the deciding factor. They're not okay, I judge myself on how good I am in the world, at what I do, who I am, how I be, and all that kind of stuff based upon what somebody else tells me about myself. Does that make sense? Right. So get rid of your vanity, or downgrade your vanity by all means, right? Become less and less and less concerned. I don't think during our lifetimes we'll ever get to the point where we're never concerned, or where nothing that anybody says or does to us will hurt or harm us or whatever, right? Kind of, I don't think we'll probably reach that, most of us. And because it also depends on who we are on any given day, how tired, as you've been finding out through this program, right? Fatigue makes cowards of us all. When we're tired, when we're run down, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when we're burnt out, we think differently. Because we think differently, we behave differently. Because we behave differently, we get different results, and we have different impact upon people, and their feedback to us is different, right? So unless we're able to get to the point where we are consistently always exactly the same person, we're probably not likely to ever get to the point where we get exactly the kind of feedback that we want from other people. Knowing that, then, knowing that, it's our duty, if we're looking at life skillfully, it's our duty to really, really lean into our egos, to embrace our egos, to say, right, kind of, all of these people at some point or another are going to judge me, point a finger at me, tell me I've let them down. Another time they might lift me up on their shoulders and tell me I'm the best thing since sliced bread, God's gift to the world, and all that kind of stuff, right? But me, I'm going to be here every single day looking in the mirror at myself. My job is to know, like, and trust myself. Okay. So vanity is about wanting people to see you in a certain way, wanting people to like you, wanting people to love you, wanting people to respect you, wanting people to value you, right? That's what vanity is. Ego is just you being yourself and expressing yourself and living out your identity. And that, excuse me, and that's really difficult when, as we found during this program, you aren't as clear on your identity as you think you should be, right? You need an ego. You need one if you're going to get through this life in any predictable and kind of certain way, right? You need it. You need to say, who am I going to be as I walk this earth, the days of my life? Who am I going to be? How am I going to show up? Right. And then, secondary to that, you can then say, how do I want other people to experience me? But hopefully, that idea, that concept is being driven from your identity. Because I want to see myself this way, I'm going to behave in this way and speak in this way and do things in this way that cause other people to see me in a certain way. Right. As an extent, there's some vanity in there, but it's an extension of your ego. Does this make sense? I'm hoping it does. Okay, so I've just got a few notes here. Um, Similarly, if you're finding that in your communications with other people, you are putting out ideas, putting out new concepts, new ideas, new ways of being, and people aren't responding to it, right? It's not our ego that gets pissed off that they're not responding to it. That's our vanity. Look at me, I've just spent the last 30 days doing all this work and redefining myself, and I've learned social aikido, and I've learned how to speak to people, and they're still not bloody getting it, right? That's not ego. That's our vanity. Our vanity is kind of saying that people should be seeing us a certain way now. You should be seeing that I'm making this effort, that I'm making these changes, that I've transformed myself, that I've done something meaningful and big and powerful in my life over the last 30 days. You should be seeing that and valuing it and responding to me in kind. That's not ego, that's vanity. Okay. Ego would be saying to you, okay, so I'm going out into the world. There's something about me, there's something about my identity, about the way I'm being, the way I'm showing up in the world, that is meaning that there isn't resonance between what I'm saying and what the other person is hearing at the moment. Cool. Let me keep practicing this. Let me keep doing this. Let me keep being this version of me. In other words, let me keep living out my identity, regardless of whether the other person accepts it, praises me, pats me on the back, holds me up to high accolade or anything else, or ever agrees with me. Let me still keep being me. This is who I intend to be. And I'm not saying it's easy, right? It's not easy. It's simple. The concept is simple, but so like so many of these things, it doesn't mean it's simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. Simple just means it lacks complexity, right? It can be really, really hard to do the simple things. But the only other choice is to stop doing the things that make you you and start behaving in a way that you don't want to experience yourself. And now both ego and vanity are damaged, right? Because you're still not getting what you want from the other person, but you're also not being the version of you that you want to be, right? If two, we may never get to the point where two people in a room are in agreement, right? Then you might just have a constant and ongoing disagreement with another person. There over any topic. It might be sex, it might be keeping the home tidy, it might be how you run your business, it might be the prices that you charge or how you want to be paid or any number of things. And you may not ever really get to an accord, to an agreement. But are you always going to be the version of you in that room, or is there going to be a version of you that's not really you, that's trying to negotiate with a person who doesn't respond to your vanity and to your ego? Are you going to be that person? My invitation is, as much as possible, be the version of you that you have determined that you want to be, right? As difficult as that might be, but be that person. Show up as that person. Okay. And then what you'll start to find is that your trust in yourself will go up. And the more you are the person that you actually really, really, really want to be and know yourself to be, right? The more you start demonstrating that, the more the other person will come into some form of resonance. And again, it might never be a full agreement, but it might be some kind of resonance, some kind of understanding. And here's an addendum to that. Stop seeking agreements from people, right? I know we've spoken about expectations versus agreements, and it's always better to have an agreement than an expectation. Always, 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 right? But don't seek the agreement in place of understanding, right? Because in order for us to agree, we go through a process. And the first thing we really need to do is understand. I won't agree with something that I don't understand from my own personal perspective, from my own value system, from my own belief system. To you, keeping the house tidy is absolutely everything, and it's so obvious to you that, of course we should all pull our own weight, and we should all tidy the house, and we should all cook meals, and we should all do this, right? To the other person, they don't necessarily see it that way. They don't really understand why it's such a big deal in your life, and so you're trying to get an agreement out of a person who doesn't really have understanding. Instead, use your identity, use your ego to keep reinforcing understanding, right? Bring them to the point where they understand, because you won't get agreement or true agreement. You might get verbal agreement, but you won't get a true agreement until somebody understands. Okay. whether that be getting your kids to tidy their room. They're not gonna truly agree. They might do it, but they're not gonna truly agree that tidying their room is a valuable thing until they really understand the reasons behind it and how it benefits everyone, including themselves. Okay, so that's my mad rambling for today. That's my truth bomb. There's no problems with ego, right? Don't blame your ego. Your ego hasn't done anything bad to you at all. It hasn't done anything bad to other people either. Your ego is just your identity. It's just another word for your identity. But do be on the lookout for your vanity, because a lot of the shit that you're experiencing in relationships, whether those be personal, intimate, familial, kind of wider social, or work, or anything like that, they're nearly always have their roots in vanity, right? Even if it's, you don't want to answer your boss back because of how they might see, they see you as a calm, collected, and kind of thoughtful person. You don't want the boss to see you having a flare up, right? Or you might be the kind of person who has loads of flare ups and you don't want the boss to see you as weak, right? Like, of course I'm going to have a go back at my boss and scream and shout at them if they treat me shit, because I don't want them to see me as weak, right? And so either way, you're behaving in a certain way because of how other people will see you. Start leaning in and putting the emphasis on how you want to see yourself. Show up with, if anything, more ego. In other words, more identity and less vanity. Hope this has been helpful. Hope this has got you thinking. As usual, feel free to ask any questions. I'd love to hear what your biggest takeaway is in that. But if you're in disagreement, that's fine, right? Disagree. That's my ego won't be harmed by that, and my vanity won't be harmed by it either, right? So, just send me whatever questions you've got about it. Okay. Till next time. Take care.